So, Congressman Murphy, Professor Sayed, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So I'm going to pick up on some of the themes that Professor Sayed spoke about and give a very important introductory overview of what's going on in Iran. And I sort of want to continue it perhaps in another direction perhaps, but discuss some of the elements that were already provided in an overview. If I can say one thing from where I come from in a scholarly perspective, it's one thing that I have learned through the study of anti-Semitism, and I think this has profound and broad implications for people concerned about human rights and democracy, is that anti-Semitism always begins with Jews, but it never ends with Jews. That once this disease, this sickness of hatred is unleashed in a society, once people acquiesce to it or appease it, it then, I would say, spreads to other elements of society, to other marginal groups, and even to foundational institutions in society. And it really eats away at the society from within and has implications that are profound. And if we study societies that sponsored anti-Semitism, the destruction, not only of the Jewish communities that this disease was unleashed, but the society itself is clear. And there's countless examples of this. And tragically, I would argue that Iran is a case in point. That Iran can be looked at in terms of its anti-Semitism, and I would say it's genocidal anti-Semitism, and I'm using the term very clearly and deliberately and as a scholar, genocidal anti-Semitism. It is a nuclear threat, or becoming, or wants to be a nuclear threat. It is a state sponsor of international terror, and it's abusing the rights of its citizens as we see across the board. And I think that this is a serious threat not only to the Iranian society and to the Iranian people, but to the region and beyond. When Ahmadinejad came to power, in one of his first interviews on television, he said, he was praising the so-called suicide bombers, and he said, and I'm quoting, "Is there an art that is more beautiful," he asked, "more divine, more eternal than the art of the martyr's death?" So can you imagine, this is one of the first interviews he said. And where does he come from, and why does he take this perspective? I think one of the things, when Ayatollah Khomeini came to power in 1979, and if you read his writings, he spent, at the beginning of his important book, just around the revolution, he put a lot of emphasis on discussing the state of Israel and the immorality and the spreading of immorality that Jewish people bring to the Middle East. The Iranian revolutionary regime, and I want to make a very distinct difference between the regime and the people of Iran, because it is a dynamic society. There are different groups, ethnic groups, political groups. There's a young, vibrant community. It's a very diverse, comparatively well-educated society with a large and wonderful history of civilization. But when I speak about Iran, and I'm focusing right now my comments on the regime, Ayatollah Khomeini and the entire revolutionary regime harbors back and uses anti-Semitism, European anti-Semitism, in a most pernicious way to further its aims, to further the aims of the revolution. And it's combining radical interpretations of political Islam. Political Islam is not Islam. I'm not speaking about Muslims or Islam. I'm speaking about political or radical Islam. It combines European genocidal notions of anti-Semitism with this sort of political, radical Islamic agenda. And it's a dangerous cocktail. Iran cannot accept and will never accept the right of Israel to exist. It must be either disassembled, dismantled, or eradicated. And why? Because in Shiite radical Islam, it's not permissible for the other to have self-determination, over land or citizens that are Muslim. And according to the revolutionary regime of Iran, all of the Middle East is Islamic land and all of Israel is on Islamic land. So for Jewish people to have self-determination on what is perceived as Islamic land is a fundamental problem. And this is why Iran will not accept the future of a state of Israel in any form, regardless of where the so-called settlements are. Tel Aviv is a settlement. And the Jewish people, through the state of Israel, through the self-determination of the state of Israel, are the only others in the Middle East to have self-determination. And the regime is diametrically opposed to this. Now, my area of expertise is more in social theory and the perception and definition of the other. I sort of studied multiculturalism, how groups are perceived, how identities are constructed, belonging, otherness, and the sort of the ethics that guide these issues. And in the study of multiculturalism, multiculturalism is not about the acceptance of everything that's different. Multiculturalism, in a sense, is a perspective that tries to recognize with dignity others, right, and integrate other people into the social democratic society as a whole, into economic institutions, cultural institutions, into society, and to strengthen the notion of citizenship. Morally and ethically, when the other is designated as subhuman, when the other is perceived as not worthy of existence, for example, or worthy of being full citizens, you have a problem. And the Iranian revolutionary regime, through its support of Hamas and Hezbollah, is an ideological movement that cannot accept the other. In this case, I'm speaking specifically about the Jews and the state of Israel, but also, as we see, with their abuses of human rights, they're also opposed to other groups of people, other political movements, Muslims with different perspectives, different religious outlooks, different ways of living, different interpretations of the Quran and Islamic culture, women, and in some cases, gay people, religious pluralism. They're diametrically opposed to that. When Ahmadinejad came to New York City and he spoke at Columbia University in front of one of the finest Middle East Studies departments in the world, or certainly in this country, in front of the faculty and students, and he said that there were no gay people in Iran, the audience laughed. They broke out and laughed. They perceived him like a stupid, small man that was sort of a caricature of a person. And they dismissed him as being ridiculous. But if you study the ideology of radical Islam, what he was saying was very serious. It was deadly serious. Because in Iran, if you're gay, you are literally, you're hung, you're killed. It's against the interpretation of Islamic law to be gay in Iran, or for women to be emancipated, or for the Baha'i community to practice its religion. So we need to understand the language of the regime and the ideology of the regime to I think, deal with this crisis and the serious abuse of human rights. The regime is intent on building a nuclear weapon to eradicate the state of Israel. When Professor Sayaj mentioned the famous speech that Ahmadinejad said that they were going to wipe Israel off the map, and it was a sort of a whole international outrage, what was not discussed in the media, it was very interesting. The words that he said before Israel should be wiped off the map was, as the Imam said. Everything is prefaced with the Imam said. Ahmadinejad is a part, and he was actually quoting Ayatollah Khomeini, by the way, when he said Israel must be wiped off the map, as the Imam said. Ahmadinejad is a part of a small group, I would say, of Islamic scholars that, I'm going to start again. Shiite Islam believes in the returning of the 12th Imam, or the Muhammad al-Mahdi. It's somewhat similar to in Christianity, the returning of the Messiah, or in Judaism, of the waiting for the Mashiach, for the Messiah to come. The Imam is this sort of messianic figure, and people believe that he will return, and the Shiite Muslims believe and pray for his returning.